Somewhere right now, two people with almost the same skills, the same intelligence, and roughly the same amount of effort are living completely different lives. One of them keeps stumbling into the right opportunity, the right conversation, the right moment at the right time. The other works just as hard and gets nothing. Same effort, wildly different outcomes. We usually explain this away with a single lazy word, luck, as if it were weather. As if some people just happen to be standing in the right spot when it rains gold. But when scientists actually sat down and studied lucky people, not folklore, actual research, they found something a little uncomfortable. Luck isn't as random as we like to believe. A surprisingly large slice of it is manufactured, built almost like a machine, out of habits so ordinary that nobody thinks to call them luck at all. So let's open up that machine. The first thing worth admitting is that luck isn't one thing pretending to be simple. It's several different things wearing the same costume. A neurologist named James Austin noticed this back in the 1970s, after spending years studying how major scientific discoveries actually happened. He kept finding the same pattern. Something accidental would occur, and only certain people were able to turn that accident into something meaningful. So he started sorting the accidents into families, and what he found changes how you should think about your own bad and good breaks. The first kind of luck is the one everyone pictures immediately, the purest, most blind version. Being born into a wealthy family, winning the genetic lottery for height or a beautiful singing voice, or a brain that happens to be wired for numbers. Nobody earns this kind of luck. You can't train for it, hustle for it, or manifest it with a vision board. It's the roll of the dice before the game has even started. And here's the strangely freeing part. Since you have zero control over this version of luck, worrying about it is a complete waste of energy. If you spend your life measuring your starting line against someone else's, you're playing a game you were never invited to. So set it aside, not because it doesn't matter, it clearly does, but because it's the only kind of luck that isn't yours to build. The interesting kind, the kind you actually have leverage over, starts right after it. That second kind of luck comes from motion. Simply moving through the world, doing things, staying active generates its own supply of chance. Think about a fisherman. Drop one line in the water once a year, and you might go a decade without a bite. But spend every day out on the boat, casting again and again, and you don't need to become a better fisherman to start catching more fish. You just need more casts. This is the least glamorous kind of luck, and also the easiest one to manufacture on purpose. It doesn't require genius or a master plan. It just requires volume, showing up, starting conversations, sending the email, applying for the thing nobody thinks you'll get, posting the video even though the last 10 didn't really go anywhere. Speaking of which, funnily enough, hitting subscribe right now is technically an act of motion too, and we promise our upload schedule counts as showing up. When researchers studied people who described themselves as consistently lucky, this is exactly the pattern they found. Lucky people weren't smarter on average, and they weren't more talented. They simply generated more chance encounters, more conversations, more attempts, more rolls of the dice, just by moving through life a little more actively than everyone around them. There's a rough shape to this idea, sometimes called your luck surface area. Your odds of a lucky break grow with how much you actually do, multiplied by how many people happen to know you're doing it. A brilliant idea sitting quietly in your head, unshared, has almost no surface area at all. The same idea, mentioned, pitched, and posted to a dozen different people, suddenly has a dozen different doors it could walk through. Motion doesn't guarantee a specific outcome. It just stacks the odds quietly in your favor. The third kind of luck is harder to see coming because it depends on something happening inside your head rather than out in the world. There's a famous line from the chemist Louis Pasteur that captures it perfectly. Chance favors the prepared mind. Pasteur's own breakthrough toward vaccination came from an accident, a batch of bacteria that had been left out too long and spoiled by mistake. Anyone in that lab could have thrown the ruined samples straight in the bin. Most people would have. But Pasteur's mind was so deeply trained in what bacteria were supposed to do that the instant something unexpected happened, he recognized it immediately as something extraordinary rather than something ruined. That's the pattern. The accident happens to everyone. The recognition only happens to the prepared. It's why two people can watch the exact same event unfold and walk away with completely different stories. A mistake at work looks like a disaster to one person and a shortcut to another, purely because the second one has spent enough time in that field to notice when the rules just quietly broke. This kind of luck is really competence wearing a disguise. You don't build it by waiting around for a lucky break. You build it by getting so familiar with your own field that you become the kind of person capable of noticing one when it finally walks by. The fourth and strangest kind of luck is also the most personal, and Austin considered it the rarest and most powerful of them all. This is luck that only ever happens to you, specifically because you are you. Not because you worked hard, and not simply because you kept moving, but because your particular quirks, obsessions, and oddities act like a magnet for a very specific kind of opportunity that was never going to fit anyone else. Austin's own example was a doctor whose almost obsessive fascination with a narrow, unfashionable corner of brain chemistry, the kind of subject most researchers politely ignored, happened to put him in exactly the right place the moment that boring corner suddenly became the center of a major discovery. Nobody else was positioned to notice it, because nobody else had spent years quietly obsessing over that one strange thread nobody cared about. It's the luck version of a lock and key. The opportunity was built for a very specific shape, and it happened to be your shape. You can't force this kind of luck directly, but you can stop suppressing it. Most people sound down their odd interests to seem more normal, more employable, more easy to categorize. This particular kind of luck rewards the opposite instinct, leaning into the specific, slightly strange thing that makes you unlike everyone else in the room. The niche nobody else wanted is very often exactly where the door was hiding. Austin explained why luck comes in different flavors, but a psychologist named Richard Wiseman went further and actually tested what lucky and unlucky people do differently in real, controlled experiments. He handed people a newspaper and asked them to count every photograph inside it. Buried on one of the early pages in huge letters was a message that read, "Stop counting. This newspaper has 43 photographs." The participants who described themselves as unlucky were laser-focused on the task and missed the message completely. The ones who called themselves lucky noticed it in seconds, simply because they weren't only looking for what they'd been told to look for. That single experiment captured something bigger about how lucky people move through the world. They notice more because they aren't narrowly fixated. They trust their hunches instead of talking themselves out of them, treating intuition as useful information rather than nonsense. They tend to expect good outcomes, which sounds like fluffy self-help until you realize what it actually does mechanically. People who expect things to work out tend to persist a little longer after setbacks, and persistence simply gives chance more time to work in their favor. And when something does go wrong, they instinctively search for the version of the story where it eventually helped them, which quietly changes what they choose to do next. None of that requires talent, it's just behavior, which means encouragingly that it can be learned. So if luck really is closer to a system than a mystery, here's what tilting it in your favor actually looks like in practice. It means increasing your motion, more conversations, more small attempts, more shots taken, so that a good outcome becomes statistically likely instead of a miracle. It means widening how visible your effort is, talking about what you're working on instead of hiding it, because hidden effort collects almost no luck at all. It means going deep enough into one area of expertise that you become capable of recognizing the strange, useful accident when it finally shows up in front of you. It means protecting the interests that make you a little unusual instead of quietly sanding them down, because that oddness might be the exact shape the next opportunity is looking for. And it means treating a setback as an unfinished story rather than a final verdict, because the version of you that keeps moving after a bad break simply gets more rolls of the dice than the version that stops. None of this guarantees anything, and it shouldn't pretend to. Luck, even the manufactured kind, is still fundamentally about probability, not certainty. You can do everything right and still wait a long time for your break, but that's actually the hopeful part of the whole story. If luck were pure magic, there would be nothing left to do but wait for it. Since it's mostly a numbers game shaped by motion, attention, expertise, and identity, it turns out to be a game you can actually play. So maybe the real question isn't why you aren't lucky yet. It's simply this: how much surface area are you actually giving luck to work with?